Thank you. I have a question for the Thulani. Uh, for the people with disability, do you have any ideas how should we empower people with disability or disabled peoples? Because when we are talking about inequality, many people thinks disabled people are very like a different way than normal people. So you are also raising awareness about education and equality. That's why I'm wondering, do you have any suggestions or ideas we can easily work and deal with people with disability, disabled people? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. But for me, I think that each and every community always have solutions to its challenges. So it depends on how do you look at people. Unfortunately, in our case, we don't see anyone disabled. So that's why even people with disability they are treated equally, just like those that are able, so that everybody can be able to participate equally. Because what we have seen through that is that sometimes you get to be given a position just because of the condition or your skin color or anything. You're not being empowered because of your qualities. So for us, we don't have anything specific. We'll just provide the opportunities to all our members, whether you disabled or able-bodied, so that you can be able to succeed on your own.
Yeah, I just want to follow up a little bit. No, I had a friend from South Africa and Ghana,
Yeah.
and
Ghana is
and
another country, South Africa. So we've got a continent that is
yeah,
Africa. Then you've
yeah,
got about 56 countries.
yeah,
Then Ghana is way, way far from South Africa. So
yeah.
yeah, just
I mean,
wanted to
there are
make sure
like
that.
uh, after the conflict, there were a lot of people with disabled. They were suffering and they are not getting married, and they were also dividing into society. I heard like this kind of problems in Africa a lot of from my friends. And do you have any like this kind of like uh, any examples to know like a more
It's about
about?
inclusiveness, make people feel part of the group. Once you start saying this one is disabled, this one is able, then that's when you're starting to discriminate. Then people start feeling otherwise. But in our case, we just get everybody in the same room at the same time. Let us get empowered equally. So that's what we believe in. But yes, there are a number of organizations that will specifically focus on disabled people in South Africa and even in other parts of the world.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you please? Sorry.
So I was struck by how each of you three have taken different approaches in different sectors to addressing, in some ways, the core of the same problem. So kind of a business and reform in industry is my understanding, Tinna, and education and democratic participation. And so I'm curious, for each of you, why your specific way works for you to change the world, why what you do is a good fit for you, or how you chose that path.
Fantastic. I think it's a little bit self-explanatory for me in terms of why I chose a different path and the approach I chose, because the other one was obviously not working. And I think it's fair to say a lot of people are making the same mistake as I was doing previously in my work life. We keep talking and talking and talking. What I realize is that the things that we do in one sector, like when I actually moved from working for the Danish Institute of Human Rights. Then I moved into a corporate setting for 5 years. Then I moved into being a social entrepreneur and a global change maker. Today I work with little communities, small communities in the outskirts of the big cities. I work with architects and city designers. I work with social entrepreneurs in Kakuma refugee camp. So basically what I learned in the corporate setting, I take and apply in any kind of other setting worldwide. Where there are human beings, this approach works. So that's my drive, is like we tend to think very sector focused and siloed, and if we look at the global goals, It is really about that inclusiveness. And I think actually it's interesting, the approach we have, there are actually a lot of similarities because it is about empowering the everyday citizen to take action in their life. We can do it just by doing something, but we can also do it with some basic skills. And I think that's an interesting journey to be on, because every time we do that with somebody new, we are in an inclusive learning process ourselves as change makers, and I think that's definitely my drive. I learn something every time.
Yeah, in my case, it's more about thinking globally and acting locally. So the reason why I've chosen the path that I'm on is because I was born and raised in the same community where there are no resources. So I know exactly what are the challenges that the people are going through. And I also do have possible solutions. So what we have also decided to do is not to have maybe branches around the country or internationally, but what we do, we engage in knowledge exchange opportunities or conferences, because in that case, then it enables other people to also do needs analysis within their respective communities, because some of the things that have worked in my community might not work even in Cape Town. So we tend to really focus on ensuring that locals get to take the initiative of finding their own solutions within their communities. So yeah, I'm very passionate about developing the area where I'm from first, because I know exactly when I'm talking about a challenge, what is it that I'm talking about.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think there are many drivers behind each of us journey of impact. And certainly for me, the premise starts from the fact that I'm a privileged individual. I'm white, I'm straight, I'm lucky. So the only fact of realizing this is a trigger for being aware every single morning in which I wake up, and I basically say, thank you for being there. But it's not enough, right? Awareness. So you have to transform this and trying to kind of go across or cross those kind of silos in which we are, especially if you come from an educated milieu in which we work by silos, and trying to ask questions nobody asks and try to engage in what we call outsides as opposed to insights. And the outsides are the things we find in another area, in another ecosystem, in another field. And if you keep outsiding, it would be a fascinating journey that keep you out of your comfort zone because you do it deliberately, but it will make you advance on something that nobody will recognize. And that's why interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary studies are not necessarily the best way to make a career, but that's where you get the great ideas, and that's where you make advance the thinking. And more importantly, to go back to your questions about disabilities, it makes advance what I call the social norm, because most of the discussions today are about the rules, right? You can do it, you cannot do it. You can smoke, you cannot smoke. But by doing so, you're also changing what people perceive about a phenomenon. Yeah. So if we start normalizing disability integration, meaning people who are disability who work, like in Spain, because an organization called ONCE, they start integrating blind people into society, you normalize that phenomenon. And if you start denormalizing discrimination or any other behavior we don't like to do, well, you will change the social norm. And I think the trigger for everyone is to realize that we are an agent of the social norm change. And without that change, the rules, the politics around it won't be enough, won't suffice. And that's where we can really play a role by basically being a model for our community, for the people in which we are, because we are setting a standard, we are contributing to social norm changing, which is the most powerful mechanism that exists ever.
Any other questions?
So you all three dedicated your life to kind of make the world a better place, and it's inspiring, I'm sure, for all of us who's sitting here. But it's also a lot to grasp, and I think probably that's also the reason why when we get home, we don't change a rule or we don't change something that we're upset with. So I was wondering if all three of you could give us just one advice, one thing to think about or to act upon or to watch out for when we go into our workplaces or out in the society, just to make it easier for us to be a part of the change.
Thank you.
I'll go first. So one of the most powerful little things I've experienced over and over again makes a difference is if we all just asked a bit more flip questions. So every time we're talking to people, like you say, we're very quick at judging, and it goes like this, and that creates the social norms, and we maintain them like that. So asking flip questions goes like this. When I'm speaking to you, I would go, if she was not a woman but a man, would I think she was smarter? Unfortunately, the majority of times, I worked for gender parity for 18 years, I can still answer yes to that question. Because I also have a strong gender bias, because I'm just influenced by the social norms and the implicit norms in society. So, but asking flip questions like that literally changes how I listen to you as we're talking. And I do this continuously and over again. And I know about my own biases and my snap judgments, but I also know what I'm influenced by society. So I know that I'm a part of society where being obese or overweight is considered a weakness, and thus they must be just completely incompetent and stupid, which doesn't really add up compared to the obesity epidemic we have worldwide. And I've never seen statistics saying that they're not smart or just as competent as everybody else, but that's become the social norm. That's how we view them. Every time I speak with somebody who's obese or overweight, I have to ask that flip question, but it's just inside my head. I just really want to focus on what they say. So I ask, if she wasn't obese but slim like yourself, would you think differently of the content? And every time I can say yes, but that's when I take control of the biases, and the biases are not controlling me. So if everybody could just ask some more flip questions. And then also to groups. Don't ask about obesity. Be more politically correct when you ask groups. But if that wasn't a McKinsey consultant saying that, would we all have asked more critical questions? You know your norms, you know the systems you're a part of, challenge it, and challenge the groups you're a part of as well. Then you're not blaming and shaming, but you're just inviting people in to think differently. That's everyone can do this.
And for me, it's also about when you working on changing the world, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have to change everyone around the world. Even if you touch one or two lives, I think for me, you would have changed the world. So what basically works is care and growth. Once people feel like they are cared for, then that's when they feel they're growing. So if you just show care to someone, I think that's going to give them growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all what has been said, and I'm going to build upon this by basically adding the humanizing element. Humanize it. Humanize the relationship you have with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family. And what I mean by that is to engage in what we often call deep listening, the ability to show that you are ready to listen and you're listening for real. And as a result of this, you establish this kind of conversation that will open new journeys of discovery. You're going to learn more about that person. You're going to gain the respect. And you're genuinely interested in listening to that person. It sounds so banal and trivial, but we just don't do it. And since we don't do it, very often we dehumanize society. So I often tell my students and the people I talk that what is very important to do when you look at literature on happiness, the so-called happiness studies, what makes the difference for our individual and collective happiness, of course, is not financial reward, which is important, but up to a point, around $100,000 per year, and then it starts going up, and then plateauing and going down. The second one is social status, but what makes the difference is social bonding. So deep listening is about engaging, is about saying hello to the people you're sharing your little flight, if you're flying somewhere, or if you take the train, say hello to the person, to you. And I do this all the time. They look at me, you're such a weirdo. You are such a weirdo. And I keep saying so. I keep saying hello. And I never engage into many interesting conversations because I'm saying hello to some people who reply to me because they felt humanized as a result of this. So you see, we're all ambassadors and change makers by the only fact of saying hello, but we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the session, so can we please give all our three distinguished speakers a round of applause?
To you as well.